80% of the time, third parties cause the problem. 20% of the time, it would be your, let's say, your own employees. And what happens is companies spend lots of money on training programs and education, all in a good way, but they don't apply that same sort of continuum, that rigor, than they do with third parties. And part of it, I think, is exactly what you were saying. Do they really understand that this third party is using the assets, whether it be the brand, the access, the money, to kind of get into the marketplace? And if so, why aren't they held to the same standard that their own employees are?
Why should we do due diligence? Doesn't doing due diligence simply open our eyes to risk and therefore create additional liability rather than minimizing our liability?
No, there's no due diligence requirement under the FCPA. That said, it often is a defense for a company to have examined particular third parties, to have a program to make reasonable decisions and to document it, such that when that third party goes off the reservation or does something that otherwise couldn't be contemplated, you can show that you have a regional process and, quote, didn't have knowledge that they would do this. So from a standpoint also of, isn't it better not to know? Well, let's look at the circumstance. That's your agent. They're acting on your behalf. Wouldn't you want to know if they are going to undertake some action that could cause the corporation to expend numerous dollars in dealing with it, from the standpoint of hiring lawyers, consultants, and then possibly having to pay a fine, penalties, and the like? That's up to each company how they want to handle it, but I think that it's short-sighted to not want to know when people are acting on your behalf that you're comfortable with them doing so.
Clients that I've seen tend to think about it in terms of the revenue that partner generates for them, or the technicalities of sort of the contractual arrangement. But the reality is you can have relatively small dollar transaction that can still create a problem for you.
It costs a lot more money and resources to investigate and remediate than to do it yourself in the first instance. Ultimately, whatever happened, whatever issue that causes you to have a discussion with the regulators about an issue, you still want to make sure that your company is taking steps such that they're looking at this company and saying, this is a good company. There may have been some mistakes. They're seeking ways to address it. This might have been missed. This might have been bypassed, but they had a reasonable system, and no system is foolproof. And so you want, ideally, them to feel good about the company, because that is going to impact the ultimate resolution of the matter. Whether it should or shouldn't, it frankly just does. The
concept of what your peers are doing, but also if your peers in your particular industry or area are routinely doing due diligence over this type of third party, and in fact you haven't, that might potentially open you to criticism as well.
There's not one way to do anything. Every company's different, every culture's different, every system's different. You said some companies want to be benchmarked to their peers, and there are obviously ways to do that. But ultimately, they're in a self-disclosure where you're having discussions. You're going to have to, whatever you decide to do, it's going to have to be reasonable.
And it seems to me that some of the less regulated industries could really look to those that are more regulated and maybe have faced some of these compliance challenges already to predict what might be down the road for them from a compliance and risk perspective.
Corporations today, whether it be top 10, top 20, top 500, how we approach the situation is so different. It all comes back to our tolerance around risk. And the question is, what factors do you use to ultimately make that call? And is anyone going to hold you accountable for making the wrong call? And that sort of ties into this diligence conversation, because there is no cookie cutter approach. And there is no, your method's not wrong, my method's not wrong, but are we still getting to the same answer? And the same answer is, how do we increase shareholder value in a good, fair, and appropriate way?